We're back here on Jones and Company, and the chairman of the FNM is our guest, Godfrey.
Mr. Cash, the Bahamas is 100,000 square miles of water. This past Friday was the beginning of the crawfish season. Do you feel that in terms of securing our fisheries resources, that the purchase of those Defense Force vessels was a good thing?
There's no question that it was a good thing. It was something that the Free National Movement government made a commitment to do before we were, well, kicked out of office in 2012. There was a slight delay, but I'm glad, and we're all glad in the FNM, that Prime Minister Christie is seeing fit to continue with that program. And so from the standpoint of the issue of dealing more aggressively with illegal immigration and with being a lot more present in trying to curb the extent to which illegal fishing takes place, we do hope that there is an aggressive program in place. From the standpoint of the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, there is every hope and expectation that we will see in budget numbers the money required to keep those vessels maintained and keep them on the waters and not at the base, either at the Defense Force or at Port-au-Ski or there on the northern front.
The government borrowed money for those boats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
$200+ million, I believe.
You support that particular loan.
I do indeed, because that is an example of where people can see in tangible ways where their money is being spent. And again, if we deploy them appropriately, if we give the technical people the latitude to make the judgments that they think are necessary to protect our borders and to protect our resources, hopefully that we'll see some returns, positive returns.
Mm-hmm. There's another referendum on tap sometime this year, and it seems as though the Free National Movement is in support of this particular referendum. This time around, you are supporting the referendum, right?
The FNM was very much in support of the last referendum. And so
on gaming?
I thought we were talking about equality referendum.
No, I said this referendum. The last referendum we had was on gaming.
Oh, yeah. Well, the most immediate one that we know is coming up has to do with
gender equality.
So, yes.
And you are fully supporting that, and you are going to ask your supporters to go out and vote in support of it, right?
Well, the devil is in the details. I mean, I think there's no question the leader has spoken to the FNM support of the principle of equality. I'm not sure what he and his parliamentary colleagues were exposed to in terms of their ability to see the legislation before the first reading in Parliament. I was certainly not able to see it, and I don't believe my officers in the party were able to see it. And so you would have seen in Wednesday's presentation in the House that the opposition suggested to the government that there was a need for more time to really get into the details and understanding what was being proposed. My understanding is that at the same time, the government itself was still proposing or planned amendments to the four pieces of four bills as well. And so it seems that even they knew that there needed to be some more tweaking. And so, yes, there's no question the FNM supports the principle of equality. It's just a matter now of seeing what's in the bills and making sure that that principle matches what is in the bill in fact.
Mr. Gash, if there is political consensus on this, why is there need for a referendum?
Well, one, because the Constitution demands it, that's really the bottom line. The Constitution demands it. If we're going to change the Constitution, the process is mandated as to how we go about it.
Is it a referendum or you need 2/3 of the House?
It's both. It's both. I mean, the House gets to, and this, I'm glad you mentioned that. This is an interesting part of the process, because in a lot of ways this is going to be a great test of the government's ability to impart information to the people. There is, of course, since first reading of the bills, a lot of discussion that has taken place. And there is a point of view that says government ought to respond to that discussion and make some changes to the bill. But ultimately what the Constitution requires is that the Bahamian people will vote on the bill that Parliament passes. And so government has to make a decision. Are you going to pass the bills and put them out there and then deal with changes afterwards once you hear what the people are thinking? Or are you going to do a two-step process where they're in first reading and perhaps they remain in the committee stage? You go and have a debate and then an education campaign. You get feedback from the people and then you tweak them before the second round of public discussions. And you know, that we'll have to wait and see. The one point I would emphasize is the test for the government is going to be the extent to which the government is able to educate, able to provide the broader context, because you would have heard from your own reporting on it the kinds of reactions that you are already getting, where to some degree fear, lack of comfort with change are already manifesting themselves in the debate. And so you've got to step up to a higher level to really provide a better way for the people.
Okay, okay. On another hot button issue in the country is the College of the Bahamas Council has recommended the rehiring of Dr. Rodney Smith. You are a former student, a graduate of College of the Bahamas, and I know that you hold the college near and dear to you. You support that?
I'll be frank and say that I haven't made a definitive, personally, I haven't made a definitive or arrived at a definitive conclusion on which way to come down on it.
Why?
Because I think it is a complicated issue in this sense that I have a lot of time and I have a lot of respect for Alfred Sayers, who is the chairman of the College Council, and I know that in making the recommendation, he would not have done so lightly as chairman of the council. But for me, the key and so I suspect he has done that because they looked at the candidates and really determined that Mr. Smith is the one who is better able or best able of the lot to bring to the college what it needs. The other side of that, of course, is that to recommend him and approve him sends a very unsettling message to the college community.
Well, if that is so, then then the search failed.
You mean if he is the top candidate?
Yes, based on what you have just said. If it sends a negative signal to the community, you have a former president of the College of the Bahamas who was terminated because of plagiarism, paid out, I am told, some $300,000, and after the committee investigated the matter, bade him farewell. And a few years later now, he reapplies, and you have a college council that is recommending that the plagiarist is rehired. What kind of respectable college in the world would find themselves in such a position, Mr. Cash?
Oh, I understand the argument. That's why I'm saying it is a function a debate that I think the college has to have, because obviously to do so says to the thousands of students who are enrolled that they are now going to be held to a different standard when it comes to integrity as students. Right, but so as I repeat what I said, I haven't settled on what my personal view on that is. I am more from a public policy standpoint concerned with the fact that the Prime Minister appears to be running a Mickey Mouse operation when, in terms of who gets to keep a job, you have a parliamentary secretary who acted way outside the scope of his authority. is asked by the Prime Minister to resign, that decision is vetoed by the Deputy Prime Minister.
You're changing the thing on me now. You're changing the discussion on me
I'm
now.
saying in terms
You're going
of
from COB to run with Wells.
Right.
But
I can go to BC.
What Renwood Wells did, does it rise to the level of calling for his resignation? Does it rise to the level of being fired? Here you have a parliamentary secretary who signs a letter of intent.
Right.
He didn't commit the government to any expenditure. He signs a letter of intent.
Right.
Not a contract.
Not a contract.
Right.
Does that rise to the level where you should be demanding his resignation?
It most certainly does. But what it does is
he should be upbraided for doing so if he didn't have the permission to do so. But why should he be fired?
First of all, it is a matter of principle. If you are a junior person within a ministry, that you would sign on the line a $500 million arrangement, essentially committing your government to do something.
No, he didn't sign a contract.
No,
Mr.
The letter of intent commits the government to engage in a series of steps.
Yes, certain things
that his minister says he knew nothing about. That his minister says he knew nothing about. That the substantive minister responsible for the environment said he knew nothing about. So on principle, it is a firing offense. On principle, it is a resignation offense. But let's say you decide that you're going to give. But the more fundamental thing that is highlighted for the benefit of the Bahamian people is the fact that, if press reports are to be believed, the Prime Minister requested Mr. Wells' resignation, and he decided he is not going to resign. Yeah, the Deputy Prime Minister says, contrary to what the Prime Minister would have asked, he didn't see anything wrong
yes, but
with
Mr.
it.
Cash, you being a former, a former senator, a chairman of a major political party in the country, you know that only the Prime Minister can fire him.
Yes.
And if the Prime Minister requested formally his resignation, then he is fired. Yeah. He is indeed fired. So I don't care what you read in the newspaper.
In any other ordinary government,
if the Prime Minister asks you for your resignation, you are there and then fired.
Right. And then you have...
Isn't that right?
No.
Now let's get over that now.
No. I mean, ordinarily one would expect that to happen, yes.
Only one man hired or appointed him, and that was the Prime Minister.
Right.
If the Prime Minister did indeed ask for Mr. Wells' resignation, Mr. Wells was then and there fired.
Right. But you know what?
Wasn't he?
Wasn't he? You would think, Mr. Jones. That's why Bahamians, mouths are falling on the floor with this, because they're saying, what kind of operation is the Prime Minister running?
But you don't know. But you don't know that the Prime Minister indeed did it.
Okay.
You don't know that.
All right. No. I'm taking at face value the well-sourced reports and.
The well-sourced?
And
what do you mean the well-sourced report, Mr. Cash? How can you go on the basis of something you read in the newspaper on something so fundamental?
But that's why I was going to make the subsidiary point. And the direct accounts that we have heard from people on the inside of the government. The direct accounts that we have heard from people on the inside of the government.
But only one person can fire you, no matter what people inside the government say.
First of all, we know we're dealing with Prime Minister Christie. He is not good at holding people accountable for anything, and that is the same reason why this sham operation is going on now at the Bahamas Electricity Corporation, where, having been presented with a comprehensive report of illegal hookups by senior members of BC, senior members of his government, Prime Minister Christie has yet to act. He has yet to act on it. He has yet to say anything publicly in the same way he says in a contemptuous fashion to the Bahamian people on the Renwood Wells matter. When I am good and ready, I'm going to clue you in. That's not the way a Prime Minister ought to behave. That's giving the Bahamian people the middle finger. I don't respect you. When I'm good and ready, I'll tell you what I feel like saying.
I think you're being a little bit off base here. I don't place the credibility in some of these newspaper reports. These newspaper reports, many of them are based on innuendo.
We have insider accounts.
No, on this issue about the Bamsi, right? Inaccurate. Nobody has ever called me or asked me for information on the consultant.
No,
I presented verifiable information, facts about this. You know something. The level. Hear me out. The level. Hear me out. The level.
Quality of the work that's
the level of journalism, in terms of the veracity of some of these reports, in my opinion, is poor.
Right. Right. I could
Mr.
give
Cash,
the journalist an excuse. I'm more focused on.
You can't rely.
The insider.
You can't rely on a newspaper.
I'm telling you, I am relying.
To determine whether or not the Prime Minister did in fact ask for a resignation of a member of Parliament.
You're determined not to take yes for an answer. I'm saying to you, I am relying on the direct insider accounts that we have become aware of.
But that's hearsay.
No.
But that's hearsay.
Okay.
You see,
Okay.
you are going on the basis of hearsay. And so a chairman of the major party like the FNM in this country cannot go on the basis of hearsay. You have to go on the basis of fact.
No, it depends on who says it.
Did the Prime Minister in fact ask for his resignation?
Hearsay is a function of who says it. No, but this story, Mr. Jones, this story is larger than the single question of whether the Prime Minister requested Mr. Wells' resignation. It is broader to the point of who were the people involved in, as Leslie Miller has suggested, putting pressure on Mr. Wells to sign the letter of intent. By his own statements in the newspaper, direct from his mouth to the paper, to the ears of the people who listened to him on the radio, his insider accounts of the pressure that was placed on Mr. Wells by senior politicians who ought to know better.
But that's again hearsay.
Okay.
But that's again hearsay.
Okay.
But we're flat out of time, and they're asking me to bring the program to an end, and I want to keep you here for another half an hour.
Well, let's do it.
Thank you so very much for being here today. And, he came on very short notice. We can always rely on Mr. Cash to defend his position and his party, and I thank you so very much.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Mr. Cash is good copy.
Oh, yes, he's good copy. No question. In journalism, you call it good copy.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, Gatrinis.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching and listening to our program today. Good evening, everyone.